Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
So let me just start with this from CNN this morning.
We are facing down a monster. This is the last thing anybody wants to see at this moment, considering the storm fatigue that we have from our previous major hurricane strike not less than 2 weeks ago, that being, of course, Hurricane Helene. So now we're facing a strengthening Hurricane Milton, now is a major hurricane with winds sustained at 120 miles per hour. And notice clearing in the center, we call that a pinhole eye. And that means that this storm is continuing to organize, strengthen, basically the bottom falling out within major Hurricane Helene. The reason for this updated information from the National Hurricane Center, because as we speak, the hurricane hunters, their job to fly within the heart of the storm, have found a central pressure of roughly 954 millibars. So again, the lower that number, the stronger the storm. They're also finding winds coinciding with Category 3 strength. Now we have, as of 5 a.m., a updated list of alerts. We have a hurricane watch in place where you see the shading of pink that includes Tampa Bay southward into Fort Myers and Naples. And I want you to hear just what Tampa Bay mayor had to say about the oncoming hurricane.
Please heed the warnings. If you can go now, go. You cannot wait and see. You have been told what's going to happen. We're fortunate if it wobbles one way or the other and we don't take the direct impact, but let's plan on that.
That is Tampa Mayor Jane Castor, by the way.
It's always a game of miles where the worst impacts will be held, but now is your window to prepare and evacuate. Have a plan. John, this storm has gone under rapid intensification. Yesterday morning, it was only at 50 miles per hour. Now we're sitting at a 120 mile per hour monster of a storm. And this is really crucial information here. The initial storm surge forecast for Tampa Bay, 8 to 12 feet. That actually eclipses last week or 2 weeks ago Hurricane Helene storm surge values from a storm that was west of Tampa Bay, and that set record values for this area. They are still in cleanup mode. It's already raining there ahead of the storm, so flash flooding is going to be a major concern as well with the storm.
CNN's Derek Van Dam giving us the lowdown on what Hurricane Milton is likely to do to a wide swath of Florida. I want to turn this morning to an op-ed that a friend of the show, Jay Bookman at the Georgia Recorder, wrote on October 3rd. The headline, Trump's lie that Biden didn't offer Georgia storm relief is a disastrous pattern. And I will share that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. In the heart of this piece, he writes, during the COVID crisis, then President Trump opposed passage of an emergency relief package in Congress because he thought Democratic states would benefit more. He said he was willing to provide aid to blue states, but only if they were, quote, nice to him. With masks, gowns, and ventilators in short supply, he told Fox News that Democratic governors, quote, have to get that gear themselves, adding that, quote, they shouldn't be hitting us. According to the former chief of staff of the Department of Homeland Security under Trump, the former president also tried to block aid to California after a huge wildfire killed 85 people, left 50,000 homeless, and destroyed an estimated 18,000 structures. He told us to stop giving money to people whose houses had burned down because he was so rageful that people in the state of California didn't support him, as Miles Taylor later recounted. In time, Trump relented and finally allowed the aid to go through, perhaps in part because someone told him that the region scorched by the campfire is strongly conservative. Jay Bookman from the Georgia Recorder joins us to continue that discussion. Fantastic piece you wrote in the Georgia Recorder. And, you know, I'm as guilty as anybody else in forgetting. There's so much to try and remember about the Donald Trump presidency and the lead up to it and the aftermath of it and this election. It's like there's so much to remember that you literally can forget because it's so voluminous how much stuff there is to know about this man before we head to the voting booths as early voting starts in a few weeks and up through November 5th. The COVID crisis, you pointed out the delay in supplies and relief efforts, the California fire. I mean, we could talk about Puerto Rico. There's so many vindictive times in that man's presidency where he withheld aid. And now as Americans are reeling from a hurricane and we have another one facing Florida, he's out here peddling misinformation about FEMA aid, and people are literally turning it down or choosing not to reach out to FEMA to get help. It's mind-boggling.
It is, but as you say, when it's an outrage or a dozen outrages a day, it is incredibly easy to forget until something like this brings it up, and then you remember, oh yes, as you said, Trump withheld COVID aid, Trump withheld hurricane aid, wildfire aid, on the basis of who was it going to help and who's it going to hurt. So when he accuses the Biden-Harris administration of doing this, it's the idea for this unthinkable thing in U.S. history, but it's very thinkable for Trump because he thinks of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the axiom, every accusation is a confession, that just seems to fit him. And right now, as the GOP is controlled by he and his family, it just seems to befit them.
Yes, and he knows it's wrong. that he's accusing people of doing something wrong. It tells us he knows it's wrong, but he does it anyway.
Well, we just learned from the data dump, the unsealing of Jack Smith filings last week, that doesn't stop him from spreading misinformation anyway. If he knows something is black, he's going to run to the media and say it's white, and his acolytes will just step right in line and carry the mantra.
Well, that's probably the more deeply troubling part, is that he pitches these lies and people are avid to believe them and aggressive in promoting them and defending them, and that's the part where the impact comes, where the damage is done. I mean, we may yet get instances out of this where FEMA workers are physically accosted by people who are believing this stuff.
Oh my God. That's happening? I mean, you're telling me something that I haven't really caught much wind of. That's happening? People are being
they're peddling all these rumors online of FEMA stealing aid and taking property and things like that, which are totally bogus, but people are believing them, and you get in a situation, where FEMA comes to somebody's door who's and offering help, and those people believe that, and those people are armed. Who knows what will happen? Well,
you make a valid point. This is the Western North Carolina area, the same Western North Carolina that basically coddled and worked to contain Eric Rudolph in the aftermath of the Atlanta Olympic Park shooting, and were not at all any help to the FBI because they are feds, and feds are not welcome in moonshine country, so to speak. And I know I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but not really.
No, you're not. No, you're not. My father comes from those areas. I know those areas. That's right.
Yeah. I vacation them a good bit too, and it's definitely Trump country. You can't run past anybody's fence line without seeing a Trump banner at some point in time. But I digress. So when the governor of Georgia, when the governor of South Carolina, when the governor of Florida, all, I'm sure begrudgingly, have to correct him, why does that not carry any clout whatsoever?
I think it's because it doesn't validate their anger, so therefore they ignore it. I think that's they need to feel that anger, they need to feel that hate. Trump allows them to do that, gives them permission to do that, and as we've been discussing, facts do not matter in that situation.
So you, as you said, having come from that area, and I've been up there so many times, I can't even tell you. It's so easy for roads to wash out anyway, for mudslides, this, that, and the other. I mean, after a strong storm strikes the area and you see the damage, I mean, my gosh, I've seen so many YouTube videos of people who have had to walk into Chimney Rock because they can't drive into Chimney Rock. How easy it is for, we've lost lanes of Interstate 40. It's hard to get in and out. It's hard for folks to navigate. It is hard for the relief to get in. Does this sort of complicate the story?
Oh, of course. But I think, we're going to see what political impact this has after by November. But the people who live there know firsthand how hard it is to get in and out, even when the roads are open. There's only one road. It's in a narrow valley, typically, steep mountains on either side. You get 20 inches of rain coming down, it's going to fill that valley up very quickly. That's what happened. So I think probably the people, for the most part, who knows, we're not there, but probably for the most part, the people who are going through this and experiencing it understand what the reality is. Most of the BS is coming from people outside the region,
right.
making shit up. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I said that earlier today. Oh, well, somebody wrote in block letters on a dark background on Facebook. Must be true. And they're nowhere near it. They have no concept of what's going on. The $750 FEMA meme is making the rounds now by people who are nowhere near this problem.
Right. And the people who are experiencing the problem have already gotten their $750.
Yeah.
So they know firsthand that the help is coming.
Right, exactly. Like that's the drop in the bucket. It's the get you by for now money. It's not the long term. Let's recoup your losses money. It's hard. The other thing I think about is this area of North Carolina. It's Trump country. It's Mark Robinson country probably as well. There's a gubernatorial race there that's hotly contested. So I don't expect this to have any sort of repercussions on states race or the state race or the presidential race, because I think those votes are pretty much baked in. But it's the ripple effect outside from those who don't really know what's going on, who may be affected by the memification of this problem.
I'm dubious about that. I think for one thing, let's just talk about the impact in the North Carolina races, et cetera. A lot of these people are going to have more important things to be doing than voting. The county records are probably compromised. Ballots. The post offices aren't functioning. I think there's a very strong likelihood that in some way or other this will affect the turnout. So I think that.
Yeah, you have to think, like, a lot of folks don't carry their voter registration card on them. It's probably stowed away somewhere, and God only knows where that is for some folks.
Right. Oof. And they're going to get displaced. They're going to end up in Illinois or here in Georgia and Atlanta area. They're going to, because they don't have a home. They're going to be moved somewhere else temporarily. And boy, if you know that area, it's hard to see that coming back very quickly. The economies there have always been it's not a place where you're going to make a lot of money. People are the fringe already, but they're doing so because they love living in that area. And I understand that. But boy, if you wipe out the places where people can work, if you wipe out the tourist industry, the roads are closed, it's going to take 10, maybe 20 years to recover from this.
And in that time, what else will Mother Nature throw that region's way? We're with Jay Bookman, columnist at the Georgia Recorder. He wrote a fantastic op-ed that I'll include in the show notes at ronshowatl.com, highlighting the many and varied ways Donald Trump has politicized disaster relief efforts and continuing to do so today at the imperil of those who are affected in North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Georgia. We'll continue that conversation when The Ron Show returns on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Incidentally, you can follow my guest, Jay Bookman, on social media, at Jay Bookman on the Twitter X platform. By the way, he retweeted a tweet from Truth Social last night. Donald Trump still spewing the misinformation. The great people of North Carolina are being stood up, Trump tweets, by Harris and Biden, who are giving almost all of the FEMA money to illegal migrants in what is now considered to be the worst rescue operation in the history of the U.S. Donald Trump is the one who diverted FEMA money for migrant housing when president. I said it last segment. Every accusation is a confession from this man. But I digress. Jay, we were talking about what the future holds for that region, the next 10, 20 years, you opine, it could take for the region to fully recover from the aftermath of the storm. And yet we don't know what Mother Nature is going to bring this region for the next 10 to 20 years while it tries to recover. We spoke with Dr. Genevieve Gunther last week on this show. The impact of climate change, very real. We're seeing the intensification of these storms. We're seeing the strength of these storms staying inland the further they come in. And I just keep wondering when Americans are going to connect the dots and realize now is actually too late to be talking about climate change and addressing it, but we have to start at some point, at some time, to start to stem this. You mentioned, by the way, the tourist season, and that's something that keeps coming to my mind because I love going to the mountains. This is the time of the year to go to the mountains. Of course, people are keeping track of peak color changing of the leaves and whatnot, and what leaves weren't blown off by this hurricane are hard to even get to because so many of the roads in and out are damaged or impassable. This is going to have a huge impact. There is going to be, essentially, for all intents and purposes, no tourism season for Western North Carolina and parts of Eastern Tennessee. Are you? Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. His son is scheduled to get married in December in Nashville, and that ain't happening.
Oh, man.
They've already got their reservations and the hotel ballroom and everything booked, but that's not going to happen.
Do you bind this with the response from Hurricane Katrina in any way? I lived in Louisiana. I saw how this all unfolded. FEMA was disjointed. The state communication with the White House was disjointed. I almost feel like Donald Trump is looking back at that and going, you know what, that was really bad. There was a lack of communication. And, those of us who lived in Louisiana, we understand that Kathleen Blanco, the governor then at the time, had a hard time, first of all, being invited to the briefings, the virtual briefings that were being held, the phone calls, and was calling the White House day of the storm and getting the switchboard operator and not the president. That's a fact. That is indisputable. But now I see Donald Trump is trying to use that same anecdote, falsely this time, with Kemp's call to the White House. Do you see any correlation there? 'Cause to me, it feels like he's looking back at that and trying to take passages from it to use it today.
Sure, he's trying to retrofit that to today's situation, and he's getting absolutely no support, as you noted, and as I noted in that column. I mean, Kemp has said, no, the president called me, and I had to call him back, and he was right there, and he said, well, he'll give us whatever we want. McMaster, the governor of South Carolina, says the federal response has been superb. DeSantis has not issued any complaints about the level of FEMA help. So the people on the ground, the people who are doing the work, who are seeing the work, who are managing the work, are saying it's I wouldn't call it a great success because it's such a terrible problem to try to recover from. But it's not for lack of federal resources, aggressive effort. The work is being done. The aid is being delivered as fast as humanly possible, given what we've discussed here, which is that the roads are gone. There's no other way in there. You have to get help to people by helicopter.
Mules. People are using mules for crying out loud.
Right. I mean, Katrina was somewhat geographically located, in a somewhat small geographic area compared to this. Here you got, 5 people up this valley, 6 people over there, 3 over there, all cut off. And you're trying to find them and get the aid to them. So it's a whole different type of situation. But I see it's natural for Trump to try to make this another Katrina. That's the obvious political play. But it doesn't seem like anybody on the ground is cooperating with him, even his fellow Republicans.
So with Hurricane Milton bearing down on what looks to be Central Florida by Wednesday, do you think that this is something that we forget, by the way, that we do have a president, Joe Biden, in the White House right now, who has been asking for Congress to come back into session? Should he use his constitutional powers to compel Congress to come back into session? Because there's going to be a need for emergency funding again later this week.
Yeah, I think he should, yes. And I don't think it's politically plausible for the Republicans to say, no, we'd rather stay on vacation. So I think we'll see how that plays out. But every indication I see from what's coming to Hurricane Milton, that's going to be a big hit again. And Florida's emergency management folks are already scrambling. So this is going to be added on to that. And FEMA is going to need more money. There's no doubt about it. And you mentioned earlier about climate change and how we get to the place where we actually start taking it seriously. These are the people who live on the Florida coast are very conservative, have lots of money, and we're talking generalities here. They're not going to be able to afford insurance. They're not going to be able to sell their homes. And you're already seeing talk of nationalizing their problem, having federal subsidies of flood insurance in coastal areas, which we already have to some degree. But it's I'm sorry, you can't justify. Those people won't. They oppose medical insurance for people.
Right. They don't like socialism until they really like socialism.
And the dollar amounts we're talking about here, I mean, your $3 million mansion on the Florida coast just got destroyed.
Yeah.
And you want the federal taxpayers to pay for that? Well, no, sorry. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. If Mar-a-Lago gets hit this weekend, we will see. Jay Bookman, Georgia Recorder, thank you so much for joining us on the Ron Show today. We'll include your column in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to share a little bit of Mark Honeycutt's journey by foot into Chimney Rock when the Ron Show returns. Stand by.
This is the Ron Show on America One Radio.
So, first let me start by saying it's not lost on me that today is October 7th, 1 year since the attack by Hamas on those in Israel who were just living their life, whether at home, whether at parks, whether at a concert festival. Thousands of lives lost, hundreds taken hostage. More than 100. I don't even know what the hostage number is now. It's because there are so many that have perished since then. Some have been released, but not nearly enough. It's not lost on me what today's date is. We will cover that more intently later in the week. However, just for a little background, those of you who maybe casually listen to this show, whether it's on Progressive Voices or America One Radio, my name is Ron Roberts, host of The Ron Show. We air from Atlanta, Georgia, and cover Georgia and Southeastern and domestic U.S. and from time to time international politics from a liberal progressive lens. And this region of the United States reeling in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Locally, by the way, from a local biolab chemical leak that has chlorine gas just circulating around the state, making the rounds. We're being told from time to time, stay indoors. Crazy times we live in. We have another hurricane barreling down on what appears to be central Florida by midweek. So unfortunately for us, the focus here has been on the storms and disaster recovery relief efforts and the added complicity of misinformation and conspiracy theories that are hindering efforts to recover, whether it be in my hometown of Augusta, Georgia, whether it be in Southwest Georgia, South Carolina, Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee. These conspiracy theories are mucking up the work. The Washington Post shared an exhaustive piece that was written by Maxine Joselau, Will Oramus, Garrett DeVink, and Mark Berman. The headline: Helene response hampered by misinformation and conspiracy theories. False claims are adding to the chaos and confusion in many storm-battered communities. Social media platforms such as X have allowed falsehoods to spread. And down into the piece, I'm going to read where this one fella from Asheville, North Carolina, has been using his YouTube platform to chronicle realities versus the falsehoods. In the piece, one particularly troubling falsehood that went viral online was a claim that government officials plan to seize the flooded town of Chimney Rock, North Carolina, and bulldoze bodies under the rubble. Though authorities and local outlets thoroughly debunked the notion, some posts on X asserting it as fact garnered millions of views. One user suggested a militia to go against FEMA. Jay Bookman earlier speaking about the potential for uprisings against Federal Emergency Management Authority personnel, people who are coming in from all over the country just to help people out And now there is the very real fear that they may be met at gunpoint by people who are taken in by these conspiracy theories. The Washington Post piece continues. Mark Honeycutt, age 33, an Asheville resident, who has been posting videos of Helene's destruction to his YouTube channel, said he had seen the viral social media posts about the small tourist town. On Thursday, he drove his motorbike to where the road ended and then hiked 9 miles into Chimney Rock to check out the situation for himself. The scenes along the way were devastating, Honeycutt said, with entire houses swept away by surging floodwaters. But when he got to Chimney Rock, there was no stench of dead bodies. The sun was shining and bulldozers were at work, but only to move debris out of the road, he approached a police officer to ask about the rumors. I felt kind of embarrassed to bring up that conspiracy, he said. He was like, no, that's not happening. Honeycutt also spoke to a worker and resident of the area who said the assertion was incorrect. Let me give you some of that audio from this YouTube.
I'm in the middle of Chimney Rock. I just talked to the police. Because they're working on the roads, they don't want me down here, obviously. But I'll just give you guys an idea of how it looks. There's this big conspiracy going around that this is becoming eminent domain. Bodies are getting pushed around, and the government's taking control of this area. I just was clarified with local authorities that's not happening. They've only found one body in Lake Lure, and I don't really see anybody being pushed around, and it doesn't stink here. The only dead thing I found was a horse. So here's what Chimney Rock looks like for you guys.
And make no mistake, what he is showing in this video is devastating. Breathtaking. My God. Again, I'll share that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com so you can see for yourself what he saw firsthand.
I'm here in Chimney Rock with Logan. He's been clearing the streets with these guys. We don't smell anything, do we?
No. If the smell that was here was more than likely the 50-something propane tanks they took out of the river. Propane's got a pretty bad smell. There's not bodies in the road, no.
Yeah. There's no looting?
No looting. No.
You can't even get in here.
No, if you look around, there's definitely not people getting robbed by gunpoint either. But there's more police and military in here than there is workers or people live here, to be honest with you. It's just a lot of chaos. Everything's ruined. There's a lot more positive than negative going on right now. Besides everything that happened.
So I think because people can't see what's going on in here, someone just created some crazy story and put it out there and it went viral.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. It's sad what happened and everything, but we're getting it. We're fixing it. And to the extent of what they said, that's very far-fetched. Very far-fetched.
And I walked all the way down here to find out what it looked like down here, and it's just destruction like it is everywhere else. There's nothing crazy going on here. So thanks for doing this cleanup, man.
Of course.
I appreciate it, and thanks for answering.
Yes, of course.
Again, that is Mark Honeycutt, digital creator, lives in Asheville. Decided to take his dirt bike as far as he could take it, and then walked into Chimney Rock to see firsthand what was actually happening there. Back to the Washington Post piece. Human psychology helps explain why claims, such as the ones that we've heard about eminent domain and bodies being bulldozed over into the rubble just to be paved over again, I guess. Anyway, human psychology helps explain why such claims have gained traction. In times of crisis, people tend to be attracted to any narratives that help them make sense of a chaotic situation, even if those narratives wouldn't pass a basic fact check, said David Harker, a philosophy professor at East Tennessee State University. He said, unfortunately, not everyone is motivated to check the reliability of the source or seek independent verification. I sort of half-heartedly joked snarked, I guess, when I was speaking with Jay Bookman earlier in the show, that there are those who will take the block letter, dark background Facebook post. You know how you can make the post that stands out with the blackened background and the larger font if you keep, the verbiage to a minimum. And everyone is sharing that shit. The $750 FEMA check. I saw this morning, someone shared $750 after the Maui fires, Ukraine aid, billions of dollars. I mean, never mind the fact that the $750 per person sort of adds up to millions and billions as well. But still, that's just the drop in the bucket compared to what comes after the fact. The $750 is sort of an immediate need scenario. You know what? My nephew got married yesterday. He and his beloved new bride, Allie, Gage and Allie, are heading to Panama City, Florida, to enjoy a little honeymoon. And I cash apped some money. But that doesn't mean that that's all they're ever going to need, right? No, that's just a tank of gas, a meal, or something like that. That's not the end of my support and love for that young couple, as they move forward. I mean, I also help DJ their wedding. That comes at a cost. I don't charge them, obviously, but and don't hit me up to ask me if I'll DJ your wedding. I don't do that. They asked me because they knew I had the means and the will, and so I did. Apple Music account and some sound equipment. Anyway, the $750 check is just here. You obviously have some needs to be met now, whether it be clothes on your back, a place to stay, food to restock your refrigerator. And by the way, why are we not cranking out refrigerators with backup batteries? We need to have that. That's the thing now, right? Amana, Whirlpool, are you working on this? Samsung, whoever makes refrigerator, are you working on this? The refrigerator that has battery storage, whether it be 8, 12, 24, 48-hour battery storage, certainly we could be doing this, right? I don't know. It's out of my realm. Back to the Washington Post piece. Before Elon Musk's takeover in 2022, Twitter had established itself as a go-to source for public agencies to share critical information during emergencies. While false rumors and hoaxes were common, the company hired former journalists to curate reliable information on trending topics and to debunk misinformation. The site also gave blue verification check marks to public agencies, public officials, and members of the news media. Under Musk, the rebranded X has leaned into its role as a primary news source, but it has also pulled back heavily on content moderation. The platform has eliminated the curation team, reinstated banned users, and replaced the previous verification system with one that elevates content from paying subscribers, including conservative and right-wing influencers. Rather than take on a fact-checking role, X under Musk has leaned on a crowdsourced feature called Community Notes that lets volunteers propose fact checks of their own. If a proposed fact check gets enough support from other volunteers in the program, it is appended to the original post. As of Saturday morning, only a few of the false and misleading posts about Helene's aftermath had community notes attached to them. In several cases, users had proposed posts correcting the record, but they had not garnered enough support from other users to appear publicly on X. Musk, whose 200 million X followers make him the platform's most influential user, sent at least 12 posts Friday amplifying criticism of the Biden administration's response to Helene, much of it based on false or misleading claims. He labeled FEMA's actions, quote, treason, and sent a reply indicating agreement with a post from another user who said Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, quote, should be jailed for life for spending FEMA money on illegal aliens and not Americans. The Washington Post writes, spokespeople for X did not respond to a request for comment. A little further down in the piece, I will share the Washington Post article in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. I don't know how to do a gift link, and so there may be a paywall, maybe not. I don't know. I think this is important journalism, unfortunately, that they should, in this case, remove the paywall. Just my opinion. Anyway, further down in the piece, other conspiracies have centered on a higher death toll from Helene than county, state, and federal officials have reported. I've heard people say there's dead bodies everywhere. That's Damian Leineberger, a volunteer who drove up from Hickory, North Carolina to do wellness checks and deliver supplies to people in Black Mountain, a hard-hit town east of Asheville. But his experience in person didn't match with what was online. Somebody put something on social media and it turns 10,000 times worse, he said. One rumor going around the area and online was that 20 people died on a trailer park in Black Mountain and that authorities were suppressing the information. I mean, but why? Why would they suppress the information? I don't understand this. Brian Van Aller, one of the park's residents, said Friday outside his mobile home that he hadn't heard of any deaths in the neighborhood. Asked about online rumors, he said he hadn't been able to access social media much since the storms. Quote, "I can hardly get service," he said. Outside the visitor center in Black Mountain this week, volunteers set up a table and posted signs with whatever updates they had to share. The signs told which radio stations to tune in to for more updates where people could find a Wi-Fi signal and which gas stations in the area were open and accepting cash or credit. A handwritten poster nearby offered a plea to residents. We need everyone to share good, credible information. Back after this, The Ron Show on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Well, you can follow The Ron Show on your preferred social media platforms at Ron Show ATL, Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, Facebook. I am a real estate agent. This is that's my paying gig. That's what I make my money doing anyway. I don't make money doing this. I do, however, by the way, welcome those who would like to help contribute to the Ron Show to keep it on the air. Hey, listen, it's not like it's in danger. This isn't like public radio where at some point in time the lights could go out. But I do have people who occasionally, like throw a tip in the tip jar. Is that where? And I know tip culture is out of control. I agree 1,000%. I hate to sound like the old man, but when I go to the convenience store to buy a soda, I don't feel the need to tip the person behind the counter who should be getting paid pretty decently, at least, from the retailer. That's where it should be. And by the way, it's the retailer that's putting the tip thing on the iPad. I'm going off topic. I'm a residential realtor. And today in my my email inbox, realtor.com sends the email with the headline, "Is anywhere safe from hurricanes? The 10 states with the lowest risk of damage." That's where we are now. We have folks who want to know where they can live and be safe from hurricanes. The 10 states safest from hurricanes, by the way, are Ohio, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Wyoming, Colorado, Nevada, and Washington. I have to believe. No, I guess I could be wrong. I have to believe that Idaho and Montana and Wyoming and North Dakota would be safe from hurricanes as well. But these are just the 10 safest states from hurricanes. That's where we are now, where you have to go so far inland and north to avoid what folks are reeling from in North Carolina now. And again, I know these are the 10 safest states. There are, of course, other safer states, but those safer states don't include Oklahoma. Because honestly, there are areas of Oklahoma that are no further inland from the Gulf Coast than western North Carolina was from Hurricane Helene. Those safe states don't include Arkansas. Again, no further inland than western North Carolina. And you say to yourself, but Ron, what about Illinois? Well, yeah, most of Illinois probably is safe from the effects of Hurricane Helene. But again, southern Illinois, really no further inland than from the Gulf Coast than western North Carolina, southwest Virginia, eastern Tennessee. And we could talk about Michigan and Wisconsin. I don't suppose those states. In fact, my neighbor Natalie, who asks me to look after her cats when she goes out of town, She said she's planning 2 trips soon to Cabo, hurricane prone, and Michigan. And we kind of joked about, well, she said, I think my Michigan trip is safe from, tropical weather, but you just never know. And I said, no, I think the Michigan part, you're probably okay. Cabo, I don't know. It is hurricane season into November, so it's a dicey thing. And can I just tell you from personal recollection, I used to take cruise trips all the time this time of year because the cruises are super cheap. You know why? You know why. They're super cheap. And once I was on a cruise with my now ex-husband, and definitely those folks, I believe it was Carnival, maybe it was Royal Caribbean, the folks piloting that boat had to navigate around a tropical storm. And it was a little rainy on one of our days at sea where we didn't get to hang out and bask in the Caribbean sun. We had to entertain ourselves otherwise because it was a little misty and rainy and windy because they were navigating around a tropical storm. But yeah, cruises are cheaper this time of year for that reason, for that very reason. I just thought it was interesting that I woke up today as a residential realtor, and in my inbox was the email from Realtor.com. Is anywhere safe from hurricanes? The 10 states with the lowest risk of damage. And that's where we are now, y'all. I mean, there are folks who decide they don't want to live in California because of fear of earthquakes, wildfires, and now we're being driven to consider where we're going to live based on the potential for hurricane damage. Is it hyperbolic? Are we overreacting? I would tell you no. In that I've lived in Georgia most of my life, Augusta as I grew up, Atlanta the last 5 years. I've lived in Greenville, South Carolina, where we never had to worry about hurricanes making their way. I remember going through a really nasty tropical storm once when I was dating someone who lived in Columbia and would foolishly drive from Greenville in the midst of that storm once to hang out. I must have really liked that guy. Actually, we didn't date very long, so I don't know what I was doing. But I lived in coastal South Carolina. I lived in Louisiana. We have witnessed in the last decade these 100-year storm events. Houston, Galveston, Southwest Louisiana, Katrina eviscerating New Orleans. Still, by the way, if you've ever visited New Orleans in the last 20 years, you know as well as I do, New Orleans ain't been the same. They're only now, 20 years later, 19 years later. 19 years? Yeah. Only 19 or so years later, does New Orleans even somewhat feel like it did back then? And they've had hurricanes hit them since. Earlier this hurricane cycle, as a matter of fact. When Jay Bookman, who, as he mentioned earlier in the show today, that it could take 10, 20 years for this area to recover, no, I 1,000% believe him. And when you see the video that I will share for you in the show notes, the YouTube from Mark Honeycutt, who traveled from Asheville mostly by foot to Chimney Rock, when you see the damage and the devastation done, you'll understand. 1,000%, it's going to take a really long time for an already economically suppressed region of this country to recover. It's going to take billions, if not trillions of dollars to just put back the infrastructure that was there, that didn't cost us a dime, essentially, but now will. All as a result of a climate change situation that scientists have been warning us about for decades, that we have sat idly by and said, no, we're not going to invest in mitigating that. And only now, in the last presidential administration, do we have sincere federal efforts to subside, including flood abatement, including greening. That is going to do it for today's Ron Show. Again, all the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Back tomorrow, 9 to 10 a.m. on America One Radio, 7 to 8 p.m. on Progressive Voices. See you then. Have a good one.